Hi YouTube, it's Colin here. After a 3-year hiatus, I'm going to make some additional comments regarding the video Quebec separation now. To date, that has received about 4,700 and some odd hits, of which I'm deeply appreciative of. A lot of the hits come from Quebec nationalists who would say, well, you know, if you don't like Quebec, you can F off. And then some come from Canadian Federalists who tend to treat the Québécois in a quite bigoted manner, which is not fair. So I just want to clarify some of my positions as well as bring it up to date 3 years hence from the Quebec separation now video. At the forefront, I want to say very, very clearly that Quebec is near and dear to my heart. I love the French language. I love the Quebec and French fact in Canada. And all I would want would be for Quebec to be a proud member of the Canadian Federation, signing the Constitution and displaying the Canadian flag everywhere. That's not the case, though. In Quebec, there are very few Canadian flags to be seen, especially very few Canadian flags to be seen in the Quebec legislature, which I personally refuse to call the National Assembly. Back in 1976, when the Parti Québécois first came to power under René Lévesque, the Canadian historian Douglas Creighton ran a piece in the Toronto Sun that under the headline, "If Quebec decides to leave, let it not be with impunity." Mr. Creighton's point of view, and I tend to concur with it, as I think I said on the last video, that if Quebec were to vote to separate, it would leave Canada with the same lands that it came into Canada with. That is, a thin strip of land around the St. Lawrence, stretching from the border with Ontario in the west to the Gaspé Peninsula and the Gulf of St. Lawrence in the east. Certainly they would have no claims to Labrador, and a lot of Quebec maps show Labrador as part of Quebec, which is arrogant presumption, to say the least. And the reason being that Quebec has benefited tremendously over the years from being a part of Canada. The lands of Nouveau-Quebec, which are contributing enormously to the North American hydroelectric power grid, sometimes, or most times, to the extreme detriment of the Northern Cree and Innu in that area, who were forced to make economic deals with the Quebec government in order to gain something from the hydroelectric projects. Quebec's hydroelectric nationalism, as we've seen over the past year or two, have come at the expense of Newfoundland, whom Quebec has actively undermined in the North American market, to the extreme anger of former Newfoundland Premier Danny Williams. So in that respect, even under Jean Charest, the Liberals and the Quebec government have not been acting as a member of the Canadian Federation. They've been acting as an independent nation, and the federal government, particularly under Stephen Harper, and prior to that Brian Mulroney, have gone to great lengths to accommodate Quebec nationalism because they see that as part of their potential voting base. Certainly in the Mulroney era, Lucien Bouchard was a member of Mulroney's cabinet for a while, and Lucien Bouchard was a hardcore separatist. But that's how Mulroney got his majority governments, by appealing to the Quebec nationalists and undercutting the Liberals in Quebec. That failed when the Conservatives got wiped out in the early 90s under Kim Campbell. The Bloc Québécois formed as a response, and the Conservatives, hopefully, will be forever denied seats in Quebec, and hopefully again be denied a majority. Under Stephen Harper recently, Quebec has been recognized in English as a political nation. Harper has recognized Quebec in French as an ethnic nation, which harks back to the excesses of 19th and 20th century European nationalism, and we know where that went. And Harper seems to be going out of his way to stoke the fires of nationalism in the medium to long term at the expense of what he perceives as short-term expedience. Now, that's not Quebec's problem, that's Canada's problem. But it certainly doesn't bode well for the elimination of Quebec nationalism and the bringing into the fold proudly of Quebecers as Canadians. As an aside, you folks should read the autobiography of Daniel Lanois, the musical producer who produced and still does U2, Bob Dylan, Emmylou Harris, Willie Nelson, Robbie Robertson, to name a few. And he is very, very clear, and admittedly he's writing for the American market, but he's very, very clear that he considers himself a Canadian and a proud Canadian first, and has no problem whatsoever reconciling pride in being a Quebecer and a Francophone with pride in being a Canadian. People of Quebec need to always bear in mind that the so-called French fact in North America, in Canada, does not just include Quebec, but includes New Brunswick, includes Ontario, includes Manitoba, and thanks to the official bilingualism policy of Pierre Trudeau, allows Quebecers to experience French services from the east end of Newfoundland right the way to Vancouver Island in British Columbia. And in the face of that reaching out to Quebec from all Canada, where schools in every school board in this country offer French immersion programs, the Quebec government, again under the Parti Québécois, but never rescinded by successive Liberal governments in Quebec, passed Bill 101 and have tried since 1976 right up to today to limit English education in Quebec, make French the only language of public discourse. And from my point of view, I find that insulting. The federal government is spending hundreds of millions of dollars to make French an integral part of the Canadian experience from coast to coast, and at a time where Quebec was considered a have-not province, receiving again billions of dollars in transfer payments from the federal government, slams the door right in the rest of Canada's face and says, well, you know, you can have your official bilingualism, we say to you, and we're going to exclude English as best we can. That really is rancorous and insulting. The Quiet Revolution in Quebec did a very good job of reforming the power base in Quebec to go from the English business owners to a predominantly French business base, even in the short term to the detriment of the Quebec economy. We all remember very well the exodus of English Canadians from Quebec after the '76 election, which was unfortunate because I think it was much ado about nothing. There's still an enormous English presence in Quebec, and I think by and large the folks in English-speaking Quebec feel very much second-class citizens, whether they are Anglophones or the so-called allophones. Recent appeasements to the government of Quebec by the federal government have not just been limited to recognizing Quebec as a nation, however defined, but by allowing Quebec to have its own independent immigration policy, which, as we've seen over the past month, is increasingly racist and xenophobic in nature, running contrary to Canada's official policy of multiculturalism. And to a large extent, they're able to run their own foreign policy, having de facto embassies in many capitals of the world, attending forums as Quebec and not a part of Canada. Recently, the Canadian Hockey Federation allowed Quebec to form its own international ice hockey team without even the Quebec Hockey Federation requesting it. Now, you folks in Quebec might find that a source of pride, but the Canadian identity has always included a large number of Francophone Quebecois hockey players on Team Canada and throughout the NHL. And I think if Quebec embraces this national hockey team, it will be another rub in the face to English Canada, further alienating your Canadian brethren from yourself. You have to understand that if Quebec decides to separate, we've heard before that Quebec would be forced to take on its fair portion of the Canadian debt, which, again, is fair. But the notion of leaving Canada with the land it came in with is a recognition, as I've said earlier, that Quebec has benefited tremendously from being in Canada. Where Quebec has benefited the most has been the protection of the French language since the Plains of Abraham. And these license plates you have, Je me souviens, we remember, is the equivalent of saying we have a perpetual grudge. And I would request that you go back to La Belle Province, recognizing that you are a province in Canada and not a nation that just plays lip service to being in Canada. I end up by saying I love Quebec and I want Quebec to be a proud member of Canada. But being a proud member of Canada entails abandoning a policy of quote-unquote accommodation and embracing multiculturalism. I mean, after all, you're bringing in enormous numbers of Haitians and individuals from the Francophonie in West Africa and other parts of the world. So you are a multicultural society, whether you like it or not. The question is whether you're going to be a racist society by giving preference to the so-called pure laine Quebecers over the recent immigrants from the Francophonie. That's extremely worrying. So I want Quebec to stay in Canada. I don't want it to separate, but at the same time, I think separatism in Quebec is essentially candy-ass separatism. You want to, or the nationalists want to leave with all of the advantages of being in Canada. This business about sovereignty association and sharing the Canadian dollar. I mean, how insulting. You leave, and this is to the members of the PQ and Quebec nationalists, you want to leave Canada, return to this association with Canada, where instead of being one of 10 provinces, you're one of 2 nations in Canada that have an equal share of the votes. That's arrogance to the extreme, and believe me, the vast majority of Canadians will not accept that. Separatism is just that. You go, you form your own currency, you vastly weaken your capability of resisting the incursions of the United States into your economy, and this is where the protection of Canada has been so important to the maintenance of the French fact in Canada, that the United States is extremely xenophobic compared to the attitudes of Canadians. Look at the degree to which the United States is alarmed that Spanish will eventually become a second official language in the United States. There's a huge majority in the United States who say English only. English is the official language. If you separate from Canada, you automatically fall into a greater sphere of influence with the United States, and that will diminish your ability to protect the French language in Quebec. To those of you who think that you have to pass laws restricting English, if you're a Quebec francophone and you don't want to speak English, don't speak English. Don't allow your kids to learn English. The reality, though, is that in today's economy, English is the Latin of the modern world. It is the language upon which the world operates. Could have been Russian, could have been German, could have been French, but it's not. It's English. So a lot of Quebecers, most Quebecers, are bilingual, and I say bless you. I wish I was bilingual. The French language instruction I received in school was terrible. But I still try, and I visit Quebec on occasion. I visit France on occasion. I've visited French West Africa and had to struggle in French. But the bottom line is that Canada, the Canadian identity, includes the French language, includes Quebec. So please, stay.